The courtroom was unusually crowded that morning. People filled every bench, whispering to each other as cameras from local news channels pointed toward the front. The case had already started trending online because it involved a wealthy businessman, a quiet maid, and shocking accusations that many believed would end one woman's life forever. At the center of the room stood Maria, a housemaid who had worked quietly for years in one of the most luxurious mansions in the city. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched the edge of her worn shawl. Her eyes lowered, afraid to meet anyone's gaze. She looked exhausted, but there was something else in her expression, a silent desperation that no one seemed to notice. Across the courtroom sat Mr. Harrison, a powerful and respected businessman known for his success, influence, and spotless public image. He sat confidently beside his expensive legal team, occasionally adjusting his cufflinks, as if the entire situation was nothing more than a minor inconvenience. His lawyers were already presenting strong arguments, accusing Maria of theft and betrayal. According to them, valuable jewelry had disappeared from his mansion, and all evidence pointed directly toward the innocent Maid. The courtroom murmured as the prosecutor described how Maria allegedly abused the trust of her employer, using emotional words that made her sound like a criminal mastermind rather than a struggling worker trying to support her family. Maria tried to speak once, her voice barely rising above a whisper, but her lawyer gently stopped her, signaling her to stay quiet. The judge watched carefully, maintaining a serious expression, while reviewing documents placed before him. The tension in the courtroom kept building as witnesses from the mansion staff began sharing statements. Some spoke nervously, others avoided eye contact, but their testimonies slowly painted Maria as guilty. The atmosphere grew heavier with every passing minute, and it seemed like the final verdict was already being written before the judge even spoke. Sitting quietly in the last row was a young girl no older than 14. She wore a simple dress and held a school bag tightly against her chest. Her name was Elena, Maria's daughter. She had watched her mother leave home every morning before sunrise, working long hours just to provide food, school fees, and a small rented apartment where they lived. Elena's eyes were filled with fear as she listened to strangers describe her mother as a liar and a thief. She wanted to scream, to stand up, to tell everyone how her mother sacrificed everything for her, but fear glued her to her seat. As the prosecutor demanded strict punishment and even suggested jail time for Maid, the courtroom fell silent. The judge adjusted his glasses, preparing to announce his preliminary decision. Maria closed her eyes slowly, as if preparing herself for a fate she could not escape. Mr. Harrison leaned back in his chair, confident that justice would favor him. But in that exact moment, something unexpected happened. Elena suddenly stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her eyes held a determination no one had noticed before. Slowly, she reached into her school bag and pulled out her phone. The screen glowed brightly in the quiet courtroom as she raised it toward the judge. For a brief second, confusion spread across the room. The judge frowned, clearly irritated by the interruption, but as Elena stepped forward and unlocked the phone, the expression on his face began to change, and what he saw next made him freeze, in complete shock. The courtroom remained completely silent as Elena walked forward, her footsteps echoing softly against the polished floor. Everyone's eyes followed her, unsure whether to feel curious or annoyed by the interruption. Her small hands gripped the phone tightly, as if it was the only thing holding her courage together. Maria's eyes widened in fear. She shook her head slightly, silently begging her daughter to stop, worried that Elena's actions might make the situation worse. But Elena didn't sit down. She kept walking until she stood close enough for the judge to clearly see the glowing screen. The judge leaned forward, his brows tightening as he looked at the phone. For a moment, he said nothing, and the entire courtroom held its breath. The lawyers exchanged confused glances. Mr. Harrison straightened in his chair, his confident posture slightly disturbed for the first time that morning. No one knew what the girl was showing, but the judge's reaction slowly shifted from irritation to something far more serious. He adjusted his glasses and stared more carefully, scrolling slightly with his finger as Elena quietly held the phone steady. Maria's heart pounded so loudly she felt it might burst. She had no idea what her daughter was doing. She remembered the long nights when Elena would sit silently, doing homework while Maria returned home, exhausted from cleaning floors and washing dishes in the mansion. Maria had always tried to protect her daughter from the harsh realities of her work life. She never spoke about the long hours, the strict rules inside the mansion, or the uncomfortable moments when she felt invisible among the wealthy family and their guests. To Maria, her job was simply survival, nothing more. Meanwhile, whispers began spreading through the courtroom. Some reporters leaned forward, trying to capture the moment. The mansion staff sitting as witnesses looked uneasy, shifting in their seats as if they feared what might come next. Mr. Harrison leaned toward his lawyer and whispered something urgently, his calm expression starting to crack. His legal team quickly flipped through their files, as though trying to prepare for something unexpected that they couldn't yet understand. Elena's voice finally broke the silence, though it trembled slightly. She spoke respectfully, explaining that she had found something important while helping her mother organize old belongings and documents at home. She didn't reveal everything, but she insisted that what she had on her phone showed moments from inside the mansion that no one had mentioned during the case. Her words weren't loud, but they carried through the quiet room, making everyone listen carefully. The judge signaled for the courtroom to remain calm as he continued examining the phone. His expression grew more serious with every second. He leaned back slowly, tapping his pen against the desk in a thoughtful rhythm. The prosecutor looked frustrated, clearly worried that the smooth flow of the case had just been interrupted. Maria's lawyer, who had seemed unsure earlier, suddenly looked more alert, watching the judge closely as if sensing a possible shift in the direction of the trial. Outside the courtroom windows, dark clouds slowly gathered, casting shadows across the room. The atmosphere felt heavier, matching the growing tension inside. Maria could barely breathe as she stared at her daughter, her mind racing with fear and confusion. She wondered what Elena could have possibly discovered, and why she had kept it hidden until now. Mr. Harrison's jaw tightened as he stared at the phone in the judge's hands. His fingers gripped the armrest of his chair, and for the first time, a trace of unease crossed his face. The judge finally looked up from the screen, his eyes moving slowly between Maria, Mr. Harrison, and Elena. He opened his mouth as if preparing to speak, and the entire courtroom leaned forward, waiting for his next words, unaware that whatever he was about to say could change everything. The judge cleared his throat, but instead of making a decision, he requested a short recess. The wooden gavel tapped softly, yet the sound echoed like a storm warning. The courtroom instantly filled with restless murmurs as people stood up, trying to process what had just happened. Reporters rushed outside to update their channels, already describing the case as a shocking courtroom twist and mysterious new evidence involving the maid's daughter. Inside, Maria remained frozen in her seat, staring at Elena as if she were seeing her for the first time. Maria's lawyer leaned closer to her, speaking in a low but urgent voice, asking if she had any idea what was on the phone. Maria shook her head slowly, her eyes filling with tears. She explained that Elena had been unusually quiet over the past few weeks, often staying up late, sometimes watching something on her phone with a serious expression. Maria had assumed it was schoolwork or videos, never imagining it could be connected to the mansion or the missing jewelry case that had suddenly turned her life upside down. Across the room, Mr. Harrison stood near one of the tall windows, speaking sharply with his legal team. His usual calm and powerful presence now carried visible tension. His lawyers whispered about the risk of unexpected digital evidence and how quickly public opinion could shift to the footage or records suggested any form of misunderstanding inside the mansion. Mr. Harrison insisted that everything had been investigated already, that the security staff had searched thoroughly, and that the blame still pointed toward Maria. But the slight tremor in his voice made his confidence sound forced, even to his own team. Elena sat quietly beside her mother, holding the phone against her chest again. Her hands were still shaking, but her face showed determination. She remembered the afternoon she had first discovered the content. It had started as a simple accident when she borrowed her mother's old bag to repair a broken zipper. Inside one hidden pocket, she found a small storage device wrapped carefully in cloth. Curious and confused, she connected it to her phone, using an adapter she used for school projects. What she saw that day had left her speechless and frightened, but also convinced that her mother was being blamed for something much bigger. Meanwhile, Some of the mansion staff who had testified earlier gathered near the hallway water station. Their nervous glances toward the courtroom doors revealed their growing anxiety. One of the junior housekeepers whispered that security cameras in certain sections of the mansion had mysteriously stopped working on the same day the jewelry disappeared. Another worker quickly told her to stay quiet, reminding her that speaking out could cost them their jobs. The unspoken fear among them hinted that the truth might involve more than a simple theft accusation. Inside a quiet corner, Maria's lawyer began reviewing legal possibilities, thinking about how new digital evidence could reopen witness questioning and delay the court decision. He wondered whether this case, which seemed straightforward at first, might actually reveal deeper issues related to employer power, staff treatment, and hidden mansion secrets that had never been questioned before. He realized that if the phone contained authentic recordings or time-stamped footage, it could completely change the direction of the trial. Back in the courtroom, the judge sat alone reviewing documents and making private notes, while occasionally glancing at the phone placed beside him. His expression remained unreadable, but his slow, careful movement suggested he was weighing something serious. The silence around him felt heavier than the noise outside. As the recess time slowly ticked away, dark clouds outside thickened and distant thunder rumbled faintly. Maria reached for Elena's hand, squeezing it tightly, unsure whether to feel hope or fear. Across the room, Mr. Harrison turned from the window, his eyes locking briefly with the maid and her daughter. The tension between them felt sharper than before, as if both sides understood that when the courtroom session resumed, secrets that had stayed buried for years might begin to surface. The courtroom doors opened again, and everyone slowly returned to their seats. The earlier murmurs faded into a tense silence that felt even heavier than before the recess. Maria sat stiffly, her fingers locked together as she whispered quiet prayers under her breath. Elena sat beside her, holding the phone carefully as if it carried the weight of their entire future. Across the room, Mr. Harrison adjusted his jacket and walked back to his seat, but his confident stride from earlier had changed. His movements were slower, more cautious, and his eyes kept drifting toward the judge's desk. The judge entered and took his seat, placing the phone carefully beside his documents. His expression was calm but serious, making it impossible for anyone to predict what he was thinking. He called the courtroom to order, and the sharp echo of his voice instantly silenced the room. Reporters leaned forward again, ready to capture every word. The tension felt thick enough to stop anyone from breathing comfortably. Maria's lawyer stood and requested permission for the court to review the digital evidence properly. The prosecutor quickly objected, arguing that the phone's content had not been verified and could delay justice. The debate between both legal teams began, their voices respectful but intense, each sentence adding more pressure to the already fragile atmosphere. The judge listened quietly, occasionally glancing at the phone as if the device itself carried unanswered questions. While the lawyers argued, Maria's mind drifted back to her years inside the mansion. She remembered the endless hallways, the polished marble floors, and the strict routine she followed every day. She remembered moments when expensive items would suddenly go missing and later appear again without explanation. She had never questioned it, believing it was not her place to interfere with the lives of the wealthy family. But now, sitting in the courtroom, she wondered if those small, confusing moments were connected to the serious accusation she faced today. Elena kept staring at the judge, her heartbeat racing. She recalled watching the video stored on the device late at night, afraid someone might hear her. Some clips showed mansion corridors, storage rooms, and quiet conversations that seemed ordinary at first, but carried strange details the more she watched. She had spent days gathering courage to bring it forward, terrified that exposing it might bring danger or disbelief. Yet seeing her mother stand accused pushed her to take the risk. Mr. Harrison leaned toward his lawyers again, his voice low but urgent. His legal team requested the judge to consider the reputation damage and business consequences that could arise if unverified footage was shown publicly. The prosecutor supported the request, suggesting the court proceed with existing testimony and security reports. Their arguments sounded strong, but small beads of sweat on Mr. Harrison's forehead revealed a tension he was trying hard to hide. The judge finally raised his hand, stopping the discussion. The room fell silent instantly. He spoke slowly, explaining that the court must examine every piece of evidence carefully, especially when someone's freedom and reputation were at stake. His calm tone made every word feel heavier. He then asked Elena to step forward once more and connect the phone to the courtroom display system so the content could be reviewed officially. A wave of whispers spread through the audience as Elena stood up again. Her legs trembled slightly, but she walked forward, guided by a court officer who helped connect the device to the large screen mounted on the wall. The screen flickered as files began loading. Maria covered her mouth with her hands, unable to control her fear. Mr. Harrison stared at the screen without blinking, his jaw tightening. The first video file appeared, paused at the opening frame. The judge adjusted his glasses and nodded for the playback to begin. The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the screen brightened, casting pale reflections across anxious faces. Elena stepped back slowly, her hands shaking as she returned beside her mother. The cursor hovered over the play button. The judge leaned forward slightly, his finger resting near the control. Every person in the courtroom held their breath, knowing that whatever appeared on the screen in the next few seconds could completely change the case, the lives of everyone involved, and the truth that had remained hidden inside the mansion for far too long. The judge pressed the play button, and the courtroom screen flickered to life. Grainy security footage filled the display, showing one of the mansion's private corridors late at night. The timestamp in the corner matched the exact date when the expensive jewelry had been reported missing. A quiet murmur spread through the courtroom as everyone leaned forward, trying to recognize the figures moving across the screen. The hallway lights glowed dimly, and the video showed Maria pushing a cleaning cart, moving slowly as she followed her usual nightly routine. Maria lowered her head as the footage played, her hands tightening together. She remembered that night clearly. It had been long, and she had stayed later than usual because one of the mansion events had ended late. The video showed her stopping near a decorative cabinet where the jewelry was normally stored. Gasps quietly echoed through the courtroom as she reached toward the cabinet door. Mr. Harrison's legal team exchanged satisfied looks, believing the footage confirmed their accusations. The prosecutor leaned slightly forward, ready to reinforce their argument, but before anyone could react further, the footage continued playing. The camera angle shifted slightly, showing Maria opening the cabinet briefly before suddenly stepping back. Her body language appeared confused, almost startled, as she looked around nervously. Instead of removing anything, she quickly closed the cabinet and pushed her cleaning cart down the corridor. The room filled with whispers again, this time filled with uncertainty rather than certainty. The judge raised his hand for silence as the next video file automatically loaded. This footage came from another hallway camera, recorded only minutes after Maria left the cabinet area. The timestamp blinked clearly, and the hallway appeared empty at first. Then another figure entered the frame, someone wearing a formal suit. The person moved carefully, glancing over their shoulder before approaching the same cabinet Maria had stood near moments earlier. The courtroom atmosphere shifted instantly as people leaned closer, trying to identify the individual. Mr. Harrison's posture stiffened as the figure reached for the cabinet and opened it with clear familiarity. The video zoom quality wasn't perfect, but the body language, height, and distinctive wristwatch caught attention. One of the mansion staff, sitting in the audience, covered her mouth in shock. The whispers grew louder as the figure carefully removed a small velvet jewelry box and slipped it into a leather briefcase before calmly walking out of the camera frame. Before the courtroom could fully process what they were seeing, Elena spoke softly, asking permission to play another file. Her voice trembled, but her eyes remained focused. The judge nodded slowly, his expression now deeply serious. The next video clip opened, but this time it was not security footage. It appeared to be a recorded conversation captured in a dimly lit office inside the mansion. The audio crackled slightly as voices began speaking. The conversation hinted at pressure, hidden financial trouble, and discussions about insurance claims connected to the missing jewelry. The voices were careful and indirect, never fully revealing names, but the tone suggested planning rather than confusion. Mr. Harrison's legal team immediately stood, objecting to the recording's authenticity and demanding the footage be stopped until verified. The prosecutor supported the objection, raising concerns about privacy and legal procedure. As arguments filled the courtroom again, the judge paused the video but did not dismiss it. Instead, He stared at the screen, his face reflecting deep concern. Maria sat frozen, trying to understand what she had just witnessed. Elena held her mother's hand tightly, feeling both fear and relief mixing inside her chest. Mr. Harrison suddenly stood up, his voice sharper than before, demanding that the footage be removed and claiming it was manipulated. His sudden reaction sent another wave of tension across the courtroom. The judge slowly turned toward him, studying his expression carefully. Outside, thunder rolled louder, and rain began tapping against the tall courtroom windows. Inside, the paused image of the velvet jewelry box remained glowing on a large screen. Every person in the room could feel that the case had shifted into something far bigger than a simple accusation against an innocent maid, and the truth waiting behind the remaining files on Elena's phone threatened to expose secrets no one was prepared to face. Rain hammered harder against the courtroom windows as the judge signaled for order once again. The tension in the room felt almost unbearable. Mr. Harrison remained standing, his face pale, his voice losing the authority it once carried. His lawyers tried to calm him, whispering urgently, but the damage had already begun. The judge slowly turned back toward Elena and asked if there were any remaining files that could help the court understand the full situation. Elena hesitated for a moment, her fingers trembling as she scrolled through the phone. Then she nodded quietly. The final video file opened, and the courtroom lights dimmed slightly again as the screen came alive. This footage appeared clearer, recorded from inside Mr. Harrison's private office. The timestamp showed it was recorded 2 days before the jewelry was reported missing. The video showed Mr. Harrison sitting behind his desk, speaking to the mansion's head of security. Their conversation began normally, discussing staff schedules and upcoming events, but the tone slowly shifted. Mr. Harrison spoke about severe financial pressure caused by a failed overseas investment. He mentioned insurance coverage connected to certain valuable items, and spoke in coded but obvious language about creating a situation that would allow him to claim the loss legally. Gasps spread across the courtroom as the security chief hesitated in the recording, questioning the plan. Mr. Harrison's recorded voice grew colder, reminding him about loyalty and job security. The video ended with the security chief silently nodding, clearly uncomfortable. The courtroom erupted into shocked whispers. Maria broke down into quiet tears as she realized the full truth behind the accusations that nearly destroyed her life. The judge called for immediate silence and requested verification of the recording's metadata. A digital forensic expert, already present due to the high-profile nature of the case, quickly confirmed that the files showed no signs of tampering. The timestamps, device records, and storage history all aligned with Elena's explanation of how she found the device hidden inside her mother's old work bag. The courtroom atmosphere shifted completely. The prosecutor, who once pushed strongly for punishment, now sat quietly, reviewing notes with visible concern. Mr. Harrison's shoulders slumped as the weight of the evidence surrounded him. The judge spoke firmly, stating that the accusations against Maria were unsupported and appeared to be part of a larger scheme. He announced that Maria was clear of all charges and ordered an official investigation into the false allegations and insurance fraud attempt. The room filled with emotional reactions. Maria collapsed into tears of relief as Elena hugged her tightly, both shaking as years of fear and struggle poured out in that single moment. But just as the courtroom began to settle, the judge leaned forward again, his eyes narrowing thoughtfully. He asked Elena one final question that made the room fall silent once more. He asked how a young girl with limited access to mansion security systems managed to obtain such critical recordings from inside restricted areas. Elena looked down at the phone, her expression suddenly uncertain. After a long pause, she explained that she didn't collect all the recordings herself. She revealed that weeks before the trial, she had received an anonymous message containing instructions on how to access the hidden storage device. The message had no name, only a short line that read, "Your mother deserves the truth." A wave of confusion swept through the courtroom. The judge asked if she knew who sent the message. Elena slowly shook her head. At that exact moment, the mansion's head of security, who had been sitting quietly among the witnesses, stood up unexpectedly. His face showed deep conflict, his hands trembling as every eye turned toward him. Before he could speak, court officers moved cautiously closer, sensing that his words might reveal an even deeper secret behind the entire case. Maria held Elena's hand tightly, realizing that while her innocence had finally been proven, the hidden forces that nearly destroyed her life were far more complicated than anyone had imagined. The mansion's head of security stood frozen for a moment, his eyes moving between Mr. Harrison, the judge, and Maria. The entire courtroom watched him closely, sensing that he carried answers everyone was waiting for. His voice trembled as he finally spoke, admitting that he had secretly recorded the conversations and saved the security footage weeks before the jewelry theft accusation became public. He explained that he had worked at the mansion for over 15 years and had seen many loyal workers treated unfairly, but he never had the courage to speak up. When he overheard Mr. Harrison planning the insurance scheme and mentioning Maria's name as the easiest target, guilt began to consume him. He confessed that he couldn't report openly because he feared losing his job and facing legal pressure from powerful connections. Instead, he secretly copied the recordings onto the storage device and hid it inside Maria's cleaning bag, believing she was honest enough to never destroy or misuse it. When he realized Maria had been arrested and blamed publicly, his fear grew stronger. He decided to send the anonymous message to Elena after noticing how devoted she was to her mother during previous visits to the mansion. He believed Elena would have the courage to reveal the truth in a way he never could. The courtroom remained silent as his confession settled in. The judge nodded slowly, acknowledging the weight of his statement. He praised the importance of truth and reminded everyone that justice is not only about punishment, but also about protecting the innocent. The judge ordered a full investigation into the false Maid accusation, the insurance fraud case, and any misuse of authority connected to the mansion's management. Court officers escorted Mr. Harrison out quietly, his once powerful reputation now shattered under the evidence presented in court. Maria sat in disbelief as her lawyer gently reassured her that she was officially cleared of all charges. Tears streamed down her face as years of silent struggle finally lifted from her shoulders. She looked at Elena with overwhelming pride, realizing her daughter had become her greatest strength. Elena hugged her tightly, whispering that she only wanted her mother to be safe and respected. Reporters captured the emotional moment, and within hours, the story of the innocent maid cleared in court began spreading across social media, news platforms, and public discussions about fairness, workplace dignity, and justice for domestic workers. In the following weeks, the investigation confirmed the security chief's testimony, and legal action was taken against those involved in the false accusations and fraud attempt. The mansion staff who had once stayed silent slowly came forward with their own experiences, helping create stronger workplace policies and fair treatment programs for house employees. The case became widely discussed as an example of how digital evidence, courage, and truth can change lives. Maria chose not to return to domestic work. With support from community organizations and people who were touched by her story, she started a small cleaning service business where workers were treated with respect and fair pay. Elena continued her studies, inspired by everything she had witnessed. She developed a strong interest in law and justice, hoping one day to help families who face false accusations and social pressure, like her mother did. Sometimes, Maria would quietly reflect on how close she came to losing everything. She often reminded Elena that truth might take time, but it never disappears completely. Their story became a reminder that even in situations where power and money seem unstoppable, honesty and courage can still change the outcome. And while the courtroom case finally closed, the lessons it left behind continued inspiring conversations about justice, dignity, and standing up for the innocent.